Welcome to Our Next Existence by Katie and the Chorus. I'm Katie, former technology strategist turned reluctant spiritual medium, and I channel messages from the Chorus, a group of beings just beyond our sensory perceptions who are loving, expansive, and who greatly enjoy sharing their perspective of us. Join us each week as we share and discuss their ideas about humanity's existence, purpose, and future. Concepts you can draw from to accelerate your path, expand your perceptions, and ultimately step into the flow of the universe and your life. There are these maps of the world that some online shops and other places sell, in which the world is upside down. So Antarctica is at the top of the image and the Arctic is at the bottom of the image. And I remember the first time I saw one, I definitely had a momentary, what the heck am I looking at? And then I realized all they had done was turn it upside down. That much of a difference in perspective had me, for a moment, sort of void of context. I didn't know what that was, and I didn't know where to put it. I think as children, we often look at things upside down more often. I have many memories of hanging off of the edge of my parents' big bed, looking at the room upside down. There is an interest, and maybe even a flexibility in looking at things in different ways, that as we progress here in our experience of limitation, it gets a little bit harder to do. Last night I was going on a walk and I decided to look straight up. Not like around, not like over at the horizon, higher up at the clouds, just straight up above my head. And it was kind of uncomfortable. We don't really throw our chin straight up into the air very often in the course of a day. Just another perspective, looking straight up. My husband and I don't agree on much. It's been that way since the earliest days. Somehow we landed together, yin and yang, total opposites, seeing things very differently. Maybe you have or are in a relationship like that too. And on the worst days, it feels like it's enough to divide us, especially on seemingly important topics that we just don't agree on. But then there are other days where it seems like our difference in perspective creates a new idea and a new solution that we never would have come to on our own. I've often wondered what the difference has been between those days. Why does our difference of viewpoint sometimes seem like the thing that will break us apart, and other times seems like it's our greatest creation? Today, the chorus shares a message that I really wish the whole world could hear. Not because I think the world needs to be changed or corrected, but because it lightened my load. This topic, this way that they view it, it lightened things and it made the world full of delightful things to discover, full of upside down on the bed kind of moments. I think many of us these days recognize when that's absent, don't we? We long for delight of discovery. We long for that sense of trust and security and maybe even invincibility where everything is fun. And there are moments when we have it and there are moments when we don't. I don't know yet that I've found the way to hold my preferred perspective all the time. But I think what the chorus is able to share with us today, and for whatever aspect of it you are able to hear, is the start of that place that we dream of, that delight of discovery in all things, in all places, in all beings. Can you imagine if we all delighted in the differing perspectives of our partners? Not just tolerate, not just be okay with, not just hear the logic of, but truly, immeasurably be delighted by the discovery every day of what they have to say. And what if that was just the beginning? In the first part of the episode, you'll hear directly from the chorus themselves, and then afterwards we will discuss. And should it thrill you, you can even listen to them upside down. There are, beloved ones, many ways to look at the human existence. Ours is one of many. You could say that ours is an expanded perspective because we see vast portions of what you are and have been and will be in this experience. But there are other perspectives too, some that you are coming to know. There are some who believe that humanity is frail, but you needed to be held up or supported by other beings. Their understanding of what you built here was incomplete, though they themselves did not understand it. Through a great many experiences, they are starting to now. There are some who view humanity as an obstacle, perhaps. And from those vantage points, they view in humanity things that are irrelevant or perhaps unworthy of attention. And there are still others yet who find humanity to be an extraordinary fascination. A masterclass of creators of limitation, ones who continue to show others the vastness of creation by way of which they themselves have and are expanding and are now becoming conscious of all of those ways. And what does humanity think of itself? What perspective do you hold on what you have and are creating here? Do you feel like you have come far enough yet to form that perspective? Or is perhaps perspective in an infinite universe always unfolding? Do you think that you must fear certain perspectives and worship or celebrate others? You could. And an environment of finiteness and insufficiency where those who do not view you positively may have an effect on your five senses manifestations. However, there is an alternate path, many, in fact, where it is possible to draw from all perspectives energetically an expanded understanding of oneself into which your infinite connection to all of creation is strengthened and amplified. By this view, there is no perspective of humanity in existence that could not benefit humanity. By this view, there is nothing in creation on the five senses manifestations, wavelengths, or others that could not benefit humanity. This is true human invincibility. For you discover that in allowing more of the perspectives of creation, no matter how or by what method those perspectives are brought to you, you find more that strengthens you, sustains you, clarifies you, and expands you. For every question ever asked, there is an answer. For every need that has ever been created, there is a solution. Your experience of the gap, of the void, in between these two things is what you came here for. And now you are expanding beyond this gap, and through that process are seeing the versions of you, the aspects of you that creation lovingly manifested by way of all of the many perspectives on humanity that you are about to meet. Are these perspectives to be counted and tallied and decided whether or not they add up in humanity's favor or not? That's a valid perspective. But from another, equally valid perspective, the freedom to create different perspectives is love itself. And therefore, your ability to encounter more and different perspectives on humanity is an expression of loving creation. You, they, and we all are expressions of love, no matter which perspective we presently hold. We love you infinitely. I've had some experiences that I've been holding back on talking about. They're sprinkled throughout these episodes of season 1 and the start of season 2. But mostly, I think I felt like I needed to come to some completion point with all of it, that I was missing my own sense of what it all meant, and how could I possibly describe it to somebody else until it's fully baked. And so I just sat down to channel this message, and the chorus starts by talking to me first. They want to have a chat with me, which doesn't really happen that often because we talk a lot. But this morning was busy and I don't know. So I sat down and I was ready to rock, and they started addressing me. And in last week's episode, I talked about the process of emptying the suitcase and that I had to let out a lot of what happened to me over the course of my illness. I had to give it the light of day. I had to process it, integrate it, ground it, whatever word you like. And then as I did so, I was surprised that another mystery went back into the suitcase. Well, ever since that time, the suitcase has turned into a revolving door. As much comes in as goes out, and as much goes out as comes in. And it just seems like there's always something. There's always a loose end. There's always a mystery. Just as I've completed one, another one shows up. At times, I've been at peace with this process, and other times, it just feels frickin' endless. Just exhausting. And it's usually around those times that I give up the wrestling match with the unknown thing and just let it be unknown. And I think I've evolved in that process for myself, but somehow I felt like if I was going to share it, it had to be further along. I don't know, I felt that in a lot of different ways over the course of these years. And I think it's a belief that I've had to work my way through to allow in more of myself, because if you're continually waiting for something that you have in your head to show up in order to give yourself permission to release the things that are in your heart, you'll probably be waiting a really long time. So I sit down with them today and they start to talk to me. And they bring up the image of the suitcase and everything that goes with it, all the different meanings of that I've been starting to understand. They send them all over in a rush, in a lump, sort of in like, I don't know, an interconnected pattern is how it feels like when it comes through and I see all their points at once. And I said, yeah, I get it. I can't hold it back. Every time I sit down and podcast, I tell myself, hold nothing back, put it all on the table. And sometimes that's easier to do than others. Sometimes I'm really scared to say what I feel like I need to say. And I've been understanding that in a new way lately, particularly with last week's episode where I said a lot of stuff that I had been holding back. And then once I said it, it was like, yeah, that was it. I may not understand the mystery of what everything is in that message, but it felt like it was what was needed to be unpacked from the suitcase. And they said, we like that image, but we're going to give you another one. And so they start with sort of like a pitcher of water, so you pour out your pitcher, you can fill it back up again, pour out your pitcher, fill it back up again. And I was like, yeah, I get that. In order to receive more of the clarity that I'm seeking, I have to trust and let out the clarity I've already gotten to. And they said, yeah. And then they turned the image into a hose. Like, yep, speed it up. Come on, accelerate it, expand it. I said, oh, okay, yep. Then we get to a point where I'm just constantly releasing and you guys are constantly sending in. And they said, yep, okay. And then they sent me one more image. And it was of it was kind of like a torus, a donut-shaped sphere where there's a hole in the middle. And it was just constantly rotating. There was energy flowing into it and out of it in all directions. And I was reminded of the sphere concept that we talked about last week and how interesting it was that as I viewed their information, in a way, how linear my visions were, my images to match that. So, suitcase, one in, one out, a pitcher, pour it in, pour it out, a hose flowing through the hose, but again, it's still in one direction. And then they were like, make it a sphere. Have that infinite flowing hose working outward from you in all directions, across all topics, across all areas of your life, all the time. And I liked this image. And I said, that makes sense. That feels really freeing. I really like that. And I started to understand how I had felt that certain episodes that I'd already made or certain chapters that I'd already written felt a little off topic. And seeing it again in this circular fashion helped me to understand that these things are moving in all different directions. So we started to record today's message. And as they're talking about different perspectives, I totally get it. It's time I brought through these other perspectives. We're already here. I don't know. I thought we would do this by like the end of this season, like a grand finale kind of thing. Do you do that in your brain? You're sort of like building to something and then you're like, and then that one will be the grand finale, and you push it way far down your timeline. Way, way, way out of the present moment. And the chorus is like, how about today? How about episode 6? And a human will say, but then what comes next? But then what do I talk about tomorrow? But then what do I write in the next chapter? And that's the point. Until the first thing leaves your suitcase, you won't know what comes in next. You have to let it leave. So, I'm going to let some stuff leave today. In episode 2 of this season, I told a story about how after the book had been put out for pre-release, I started experiencing waves of anxiety, which resulted in new connections with beings that I was starting to perceive. Anxiety often being an energetic perception translated into our 5 senses world, where we cannot account for the way that we are feeling, which causes an anxious response. I opened up to these new connections after much consideration because, frankly, opening up to the chorus had been a roller coaster ride in and of itself, and I wasn't sure I wanted to get back on the train. In the second episode of the season, I mentioned how our first interaction was sort of one of surprise on both sides. Coming from experiences of the chorus, I was surprised to find how much their perspectives resonated with me as being human-like. That they were experiencing chaos, a type of frustration, and a type of futility, losing hope, I guess you could say, and maybe exasperation even. And I was surprised that I could connect to a being on those energetic levels that felt so much like us, and yet wasn't. It was very clear that these were not humanoids. They weren't Earthlings. They weren't me, exactly. But they also weren't that far off. And similarly, they felt very surprised by me. At first, in sort of their exasperation, it was sort of like, you answer for your kind. What the hell's happening here? I said, don't know. Do we ever know? We're human. And then as I was able to respond to them from an energetic place, they became very mystified and a little bit confused and then very interested. My conversations with these beings, and a lot of them, have continued since that time. And I think in some ways our confusion over each other has continued to grow But also, I think we started to understand aspects of each other too. So, in the days following that first interaction, I was really hesitant to connect again. It felt like wading into an entire ocean of things I didn't understand. It's like a minefield. But the waves of anxiety continued, and I knew that I was expanding into a place of being able to perceive them. And so I could continue to resist that and experience anxiety, or I could turn in its direction. Now, this is hard at times for us. This isn't easy. Just because you can logically understand what you will get by turning in the direction of anxiety doesn't mean it's like suddenly instantly doable. It doesn't become less anxious. It's just a way of embracing the anxiety. So it's not always comfortable, especially in the beginning when you're getting your footing, when you have no manifestations to reassure our belief systems that this is okay. It's a pure energetic perception. It's a pure energetic leaning. And it can feel sometimes like it's a little at odds with what the belief system feels is safe. So I will tell you, in my experience, what I've learned is go gently. And I'll tell you something else that helps to logically integrate that gentleness is that there's no rush. There's no rush. Time is a construct, and it often shows up when it is about to limit our perspective. So the times that I felt practically breathless with pressure, needing to just talk to these beings and get this monkey off my back, were actually the times that I was moving into a new understanding of time. And in fact, my first series of conversations with these beings actually reflected a lot of that, because as we started to get into the conversations, I recognized my own ticking clock more and more and more, that I had a certain amount of time that I could communicate with them without any manifestations on my five senses to validate what my energetic self was perceiving before sort of the fear response would come up, before it would be deeply uncomfortable and sometimes be terrifying for days after the fact. If you soften up on the need to stick with it, get to the bottom of it, keep going, if you feel within you your own sense of, that was enough for today, and set it down and walk away, it's an easier balance to maintain. Now, not to say that I didn't learn important things when I threw myself totally out of balance, right? Both are valid processes, both are valid perspectives. But as I've gone forward, I've realized more and more that there are ways to make it easy. And those ways often awaken me to beliefs that I held that made it not easy. One of them being, everything's in a rush and there's no time. So a couple days after that first interaction, I was feeling the anxiety big time. And I think I waited until nighttime. In fact, I don't know if I could say waited. I think in the background, I was aware that I was anxious and agitated all day, but it wasn't until, as usual, the busyness of the day subsided that a clear thought came through to me that recognized the anxiety and the probable cause. So I put my son to bed and check out the house and, see if there's anything else that needs to be done. And I check in with my husband, sort of giving my do belief systems a reason to believe that I can take a break, that I have time for this. And then I head upstairs to the office and I sit in my favorite chair, which is a chair I got on Craigslist like 4 years ago. And I covered the awful fabric with a cover from Target, and it has become my channeling chair. Really epic things happen in that chair, and it feels safe to me, feels known, feels reliable. So I sit down in that chair not surprisingly. And I check in with the chorus. And I say, I'm feeling them, aren't I? And the chorus said, yes. And I said, they are all up in my grill. I just felt like I was surrounded. Ugh. And the chorus said, they're very interested in you. Now, this is unnerving because I've quite enjoyed being anonymous. I wasn't sure I wanted to be seen. I was still coming through a lot of this stuff, So I said, okay. And I said, but I'll probably feel better after I talk to them, won't I? And the chorus said, yes. Because you have moved into a different perspective of what you are sensing, which will resolve the friction where you are right now in between these two perspectives. I said, all right. So I leaned in the direction of the anxiety. And there they were. It was a felt sense of still the field of chaos, but a little bit like there was a few of them waiting for me to turn my attention towards them, as though they were well aware of me and were observing me, but that they couldn't connect to my conscious perspective until I consciously opened up to what they had to say. And at first, it was wicked hard to hold the connection with them. I mean, the chorus feels like, well, now the chorus feels like a horizon of light. Like you could really just go this way or that way or this way. And like, you're not going to break the connection with them. Like they're just so vast and so loving. And, it took me a while to get there to that stability with them. But this was different. It was like sitting across the table from a fellow human who's talking to you in the midst of a sandstorm. Like the connection just kept getting blown around. It was so hard to hold on to. It was wild. So I'd learned enough by now that something that helps with new experiences is to generate a manifestation in our reality that represents it, because this helps us to create beliefs. As you know from listening to season 1 of the podcast, and perhaps also from the first book from the chorus, the Book of Human Awakening, they talk about the cyclical nature of the belief system structure that we built. Notably, that what we believe molds or affects the way we perceive our reality, but then also that the way we perceive our reality creates beliefs. This virtuous cycle, you could say, if limitation is your goal, is sort of the origins of the concept of karma and these other cyclical cycles that other beings reflected to us over millennia, where they were pointing out that we were trapped in a cycle of our own making. Now, as we are awakening and coming to different concepts of this cycle, this can also be, as happens in awakening, a method of our own expansion. There is nothing that is inherently limiting in all of creation. Anything can be experienced as limiting, or it can be experienced as expansive, including cycles. So knowing that this is the reality, the belief system that I come from, I said, okay, I'm having a hard time holding this connection with you. I need to write it down. I need to manifest this in my reality. I don't know how long this is going to take. I don't know how long I'm going to have to write this down for, but I have to create a representation here because it will help me to believe that this is happening and that you're real. And if I believe it, then I will be more likely to perceive it. Now, somewhere in the background, I also was doubting my ability to remember these beings, and I don't know why. I have some guesses now that have come forward many weeks from these first interactions. But in the beginning, there was a very present suggestion that I might forget my interactions with these beings. And so I was creating a representation by writing it down to help my belief systems, but also because I was somewhere certain that I would forget what they had to say. Now, I didn't write down every interaction over those first few months with them, but I did write down definitely the earliest ones and then fractions of later ones or took notes. But as my connection with them stabilized, I was able to switch into purely voice representation. That is, I spoke what they were saying out loud. Now, I'm conscious while I'm doing this, like I am with the chorus. So I am hearing what they're saying. I am then translating that into sound in my reality, which helps me construct beliefs. And then I would send them questions back via my energetic connection. So basically thinking. I would think my words back to them, kind of like the telepathic communication we talked about in episode 3, I believe. So I would think my conscious concept back to them. And then they would respond, and I would translate that at first into typewritten words and then later just simply into speaking it out loud. So, while it's incomplete, what I'd like to do right now is read for you some of these early conversations. And sitting here saying this, I have a vague memory of what we said because I've gone back and read them since, but I don't totally remember. So I'm a little afraid of what was said, or I don't know what it would make real, perhaps. I think you know what I mean. So we'll give it a shot. We're here together. If it starts to get weird or wild, I can abort mission, or you can, because there's really no rush. We've got as much time as we need for all of this, for all of these encounters, for all of this understanding, for all the things that we want. We are the creators of time. And we're moving into a place where we are more free to create. Now, I'm going to oscillate my voice slightly when I speak from them. I'm not going to do like a caricature of like a extraterrestrial voice. Like, just no. I think you guys will get it. So I'm going to sound maybe slightly stilted or translated, perhaps, as I read what they said, and then I'll hopefully just sound like me as I said what I said. So here we go. One of the first interactions with them after the interaction I spoke about in episode 2. Greetings. We are with you. We appreciate this connection. There is much we attempt to understand about your kind, and have tried to, for a very long time. Humans are a mystery to us. We do not comprehend why you do the things that you do. We are trying to understand. How can I help? What shall we call you? My human friends call me Katie. The chorus calls me Bridge Builder. Bridge Builder, then. For we do not feel we are human like your friends are, and this is an energetic connection, one of many we hope to make with your kind. Are you not curious about us? Hesitant, actually. We understand. Some of our kind is hesitant about yours. We would like to understand why humans betray. We have made agreements that have been broken. We have sought and found, sometimes, understanding. But then, those humans go away, and others take their place that are conniving, deceitful. We are frustrated and angry. Thank you Beloved one, bridge builder, we feel the sincerity of your words. It assists us. And here I'll just make a sidebar that as they were sending to me this message of their frustration over the encounters that they'd had with some of us, I felt it. I felt what they feel. And so energetically, I think I responded almost instantaneously with condolences, empathy, that I understand what it's like to feel deceived too. And I know what it's like to feel frustrated and angry. And so I didn't actually apologize for humanity. I expressed that I understand how hard it is to feel like that sometimes. So then I said, do you know about our beliefs? Only some. We are awakening as well and are coming to new understandings of our existence, as are you. This has caused us to question many of the assumptions we had about your kind. Would you be willing to share some of your assumptions with me? We assume that you understand the larger context. It has become clear to us that you do not, despite our efforts to share that information with you. We assume you have a general idea of how things work, only to find that you had not. We assume you have the best interests of all in mind, and sometimes you claim to care about everyone. But over and over again, there is a narrow view, a slice of a solution that you take at the expense of everything that is being built. That is frustrating. Yes, it is. Many of our kind have given up on helping yours any longer. They say it is futile. Is it futile? I'm not sure I would say it is futile, but that is because I'm not sure I believe in futility. The times I've felt that way was because I was staring at a gap. This feels like a gap in understanding to me. But I can understand that it might feel like one that would be difficult or impossible to cross at times. We agree. The Course has told me that we hold beliefs that will suggest that a thing is not possible, most strongly, just before that thing appears, as a way of preventing our view of the infinite. Do you also experience this in your belief systems? We may, though we see this now in your behavior. Yes, but these things are still unconscious to us. We think we are solving something, helping something, making it more safe or more in our control, when in actuality we are undoing the expression of the infinite that would otherwise come through. If what is being built or put together will expand our view of the infinite, we will often prevent that for ourselves via unconscious beliefs that tell us to take action, which we think is reasonable and well-motivated, but in reality furthers our limitation. We are contemplating. This makes sense to us. We do not know we're doing it. This we have seen, though there are some who believe that you do know what you are doing. I do not know the specifics of those encounters, but I can tell you that when motivated by fear and protection, humans will change course quickly. Often as we are about to expand into more trust, more of the infinite, we will find a reason not to trust. And will so unconsciously or consciously end up creating things that are not trustworthy. Our sense of fear is our sense of our own fence line between us and the rest of creation. Can I ask you a question? Yes, by all means. Are humans often afraid when they encounter you? Yes. Then, to put it directly, you are beyond their fence line. Even if they perceive you unconsciously, beliefs will be at play which will cause them to undo their perception of you and their understandings of you. Yes, this we have seen. How do we become on the right side of your fence line? I'm not certain, but I think this is a good start. I do not feel fear. We are glad of this. Have I helped you? Indeed, though there is more we wish to discuss. Understood. I must do this in small increments. Though I do not feel fear now, if I press too much on my belief systems during a singular or short span of time, it becomes difficult for me. This we understand. Your concept of time. Yes, it's integrated across all of our beliefs. If you've been pressing on their beliefs about linear time too much, they would be unable to integrate you or what you're telling them. It would violate too many of the rules of our group consensus. We, too, have a group consensus. You look alike? We do. I look forward to seeing you one day. Be well, my friends. We may talk again in the future. Thank you, Bridge Builder. It has been our honor. You have helped us greatly. We look forward to the conversations ahead. All right, big deep breath. Or I just took one. It makes sense somehow, doesn't it? I mean, even if you don't believe that I had this conversation, which I don't think is required, honestly. I don't think you have to get the benefit that, like, the energetic expansiveness of what the chorus is talking about today. I mean, because even if you don't believe it, there's something relatable about their perspective. Almost maybe so much that it's not even surprising. Like, yeah, of course, working with humans is a pain in the butt. Right? I mean, it could be like the same as a conversation with someone, a friend of yours who's so frustrated with their team at work or at school or in sports, where it's just not gelling. Like, no matter what you do, no matter which way you approach it, it just keeps failing. And I think what's interesting is that if I ever imagined having a conversation with an alien race, and I say alien broadly and loosely and kind of as a joke because what a construct. I mean, we have taken the bucket of all things, all beings that exist beyond our reality and just like labeled it extraterrestrials. Like, does the chorus go in that bucket? Does Abraham go in that bucket? Like, we need more buckets, guys. After having talked to all of these friggin' beings for a few years now, like, the one bucket, it's not enough. There's so much out there and there's so many different ways to look at it. And yeah, they're all beyond our reality. And so sure, that bucket makes sense, but I think it denies ourselves the perspective of the nuance, the meaningful nuance that's in that bucket. So if I ever imagined a conversation with extraterrestrials, I can guarantee you it didn't have anything to do about our beliefs. It had to do with like their spaceship and how they fly so far or travel such distances or what do they eat for food, right? It was a comparison of my five senses reality to theirs. And now, I mean, having had this conversation that I just read back to you, I was sort of amazed that in that energetic place, I felt like they were very different pertinent topics. I saw our connection and our relationship and our understanding of each other at those broader places, at those broader levels, where it felt perfectly reasonable to take an experience that they are mystified by, that they have had with humanity, and describe it by way of the things we believe. And through this conversation, as the chorus talked about today in terms of different perspectives, I recognized that I could see it both ways. I can understand how hard it is to work on a team with humans. Been there. And I also understood it completely. And notably, related to last week's episode, I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel ashamed that I'm one of those pain in the ass humans too. I didn't even feel anger or frustration with those humans that they had interacted with. If anything, I felt a deep empathy and appreciation for those, because I know what it's like to stand at the front line. I know what it's like to stand at the edge of our beliefs and do the best you friggin' can, and maybe not even understand yourself at times why it's not going so well before you get sucked back into the beliefs. I saw in a new way everything we'd created. I have the benefit of all those years being tutored by the course, and that helped me in this interaction. But also, these beings represented a perspective that was new. It wasn't quite the course, and it wasn't quite human either. I now had a triad. And through the benefit of that, I realized what I saw about my own kind and theirs in new ways. The choice that the chorus talks about today in terms of coming up against new perspectives and feeling an ability to choose the aspects of all of those things isn't coming from a place of working to understand somebody else. It's not coming from a place of studying their culture and their kind, of categorizing and labeling and putting it all into a database and memorizing. It comes from that place of allowance where it's okay for them to be them, and it's okay for us to be us. And by that view, as the chorus said, we truly are invincible, because we amplify and we allow everything that we are to become more, to become real, and to be expanded. There are many conversations to come. And thank you for letting me share this one. I imagine something else will come into the suitcase as a result of this episode. Something will fly through the hose, or something will radiate out of me in new directions. And I think that things are starting to radiate out of you, too. Loved and appreciated your energetic presence here today. For more information on The Chorus and I, our book, the podcast, our store, or how to get in touch with us, visit katieandthechorus.com. Thanks again. See you next time.